You should all. Except for everything's going.
All right, I'll check it out. That was having a hard time if I could find a way to set it up. Yeah, well, Zoom is just like PayPal. I can yeah. You guys good with white balance? Sound check, check 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10. Check 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10. White balance? You guys good with white? It's about 5,000. Give or take 1 or 200. Everyone good? Yeah. All right.
No, Callahan's calling in. He wants Callahan next time. And cops here.
Oh, should go back to where you were, with the task force. That should be at the bottom and maybe a little quicker.
I'm fine with that. We don't want to just right back. So you have enough slow now.
It's just 1 o'clock, and some people have a little trouble finding this building, so we're just going to give people a few more minutes to get here. I'm hearing that some people are requesting 5 minutes, so. Go back.
But then again, my laptop doesn't work. No, it's, we have it up, it's, we can't get it.
The top part?
And I'm not a PC person. And we did it with the Mac, on the Mac, it shows for a minute. So. I'm gonna open up the logo on having that.
Ooh, where'd it go?
What's wrong with PCs and why they have this stuff, what you
Thank you.
That's fine.
Can we just like, yeah, same thing. I have another question. We changed slides recently. You know, when you open the photo on your PC, and it has a bar at the top that says like,
Pause
add
it.
to album, see all photos, print. Do you know how to get rid of that bar? So you could just see the photo and not the like PC like help bar. At the bottom, you said?
Good to go?
We don't want, we want to put the video up. The image. No one here has ever used it before.
Okay.
And, you know, on the phone with state police, turnpike IT. So we're gonna have to make a decision whether we want it. Oh, I'm sorry, Sam. I'm so sorry. That doesn't. So we're gonna have to make a call whether we want that block on or we don't want it. We don't want to do something for the state.
Okay.
We've got
Like you said, we're gonna try locks. We're gonna get rid of the time on the locks.
Can you run it as a slideshow and pause it?
That's what we're just trying to do, so you just switch it out.
Why While we're waiting, we can try to give you guys paper. As we fill more trees. Don't mind that. Oh, there you go. Got the whole crew here. I'm sure. I'm coming. I missed one back that way.
All right, we're gonna try this. If I have another problem, I will call you. I'll call you back.
Anybody else? We're good? I'll leave it on the table.
Yeah,
Will it stay like that?
I think one of us should stand in that. No, it is full. But it's green.
It's good? All right. All right, so I might as well do this before I go over there. All the other documents that you'll need for today are up on our website. It'll include the directive. It'll include other information that you guys need. If you need anything else, Peter Asseltine is in the office. He'll be there to answer any questions you guys have after the press conference and to help you with any documents. We do have a detective from the Bergen County Prosecutor's Office who is here today who will be able to do Spanish-speaking interviews for anybody who needs that. I can hook you up with her as soon as we're done. And just to let you know who's joining us today, we have Colonel Pat Callahan from the State Police. We have the Director of the Newark Police Department, Anthony Ambrose, his Chief, Darnell Henry. We have the Director of the Division of Criminal Justice, Veronica Allende, and we have 3 prosecutors with us, Francis Koch, Ted Stevens, and Angelo Onifrey. So they will be joining us in the back. They'll all be standing. So if you have any other questions, you can find me afterwards. I think that's basically it. We'll do some Q&A after. We'll take on topic first. We'll go to off topic if we have time after that. And just look for my cue if we're cutting it off because it means we're running behind already. All right. What does this say? Oh, Chief. Okay.
One, two, mic check. 1, 2, 3, checking.
There you go. There you go. All right, we've already done our introductions, but I want to thank you all for coming. As soon as everyone enters the room, I will turn it over to the Attorney General. Thank you.
All right, good afternoon, everyone. I want to thank you all for joining us. I want to thank Colonel Pat Callahan, Director Veronica Allende, Chief Darnell Henry from the Newark Police Department, Police Director Ambrose, Weldon Powell, the Chief of the Division of Criminal Justice, Sergeant Rueda from the Bergen County Prosecutor's Office, and the county prosecutors who are here this afternoon, Francis Koch from Sussex, Ted Stevens from Essex, and then Angela Onifrey from Mercer. We're also joined by First Assistant Prosecutor Romesh Sukdeo from Essex as well. I want to thank them for joining us. I want to thank them for standing with me this afternoon and all days as well. We're here to talk about an important issue. 10 months ago, I signed an order. It was an order designed to strengthen trust between New Jersey's 36,000 law enforcement officers and our state's diverse immigrant communities. That statewide order is known as the Immigrant Trust Directive. And that order drew a clear, bright line between our state's law enforcement officers on the one hand, who enforce our state's criminal laws, and federal civil immigration officers on the other, who enforce the country's immigration laws. The purpose of that directive was absolutely clear. We wanted to ensure that victims, that witnesses to crimes, felt comfortable reporting those crimes to law enforcement, regardless of their immigration status. That not only makes it easier for our officers to solve crimes, but it also improves public safety for our state's 9 million residents. Earlier today, I signed another order, one that revises our Immigrant Trust Directive. Among other changes, today's order prohibits local law enforcement agencies from entering into a particular type of federal-state agreement, an agreement that undermines public safety by blurring that bright, clear line that we drew in this state between our law enforcement officers and ICE, a line that is critical to effective policing in this state. These agreements, known as 287G agreements, allow ICE to deputize our state's law enforcement officers as federal immigration officers. They allow ICE to enlist our cops to carry out all the duties of federal civil immigration officers. And the more we study these agreements, the more concerned we became. You see, over the past 10 months, we've worked hard to help New Jersey residents understand that distinction between our law enforcement officers and federal immigration officers. And we've worked tirelessly to encourage all residents of this state to feel comfortable reporting crimes to law enforcement. It's not always easy. I have met with community groups, in church basements, and in school gyms and everywhere in between, trying to build trust with groups where that trust may not come easily. I've tried to explain how under last year's directive, a simple traffic stop would not land that individual reporting a crime in immigration proceedings. I tried to explain how, regardless of your immigration status, how a call to 911 to report a domestic abuser won't end with an ICE raid. But it's clear that 287G agreements make this task even harder. It's clear that these agreements only serve to confuse residents about which law enforcement officers work for the state and which ones work for the feds. And here's the thing. The overwhelming majority of New Jersey's police leaders already appreciate the problems that these agreements can create. That's why in a state of over 500 law enforcement agencies, 500 plus agencies in the state, only two still maintain 287G agreements with ICE, the sheriff's offices in Cape May and Monmouth counties. And over the past several months, we've tried to learn why these two agencies feel so strongly about continuing their arrangements with ICE. And it's become clear to me that their justifications simply don't hold up. I've concluded that these agreements undermine public trust without enhancing public safety, and that any of their purported benefits are already achieved through our Immigrant Trust Directive. The arguments in favor of striking these deals with ICE rely on a number of common misconceptions that I'd like to clear up here today. First, critics like to claim that we're providing, quote, sanctuary to dangerous criminals. Nothing could be further from the truth. Under our Immigrant Trust Directive, if you break the law, you go to jail regardless of your immigration status. No one, and I repeat, no one, gets a free pass in this state to commit crime. Second, critics also like to claim that we're releasing dangerous criminals back onto the street and that we need these agreements with ICE to stop that from happening. That is just flat out wrong. And those who say or suggest otherwise are either misinformed or deliberately misleading the public. The Immigrant Trust Directive explicitly allows county jails to identify the most violent and the most serious offenders, including those charged with rape, murder, arson, robbery, and other serious offenses, and to provide their information to federal authorities. And if a judge grants bail and decides to release one of those individuals, or if one of those inmates finishes a jail sentence, our directive allows those jails to continue holding those individuals for a period of time to ensure that they are promptly transferred to immigration custody. In fact, as part of the revisions I've made today to the Immigrant Trust Directive, we are updating the list of crimes that trigger these notifications to federal authorities. We're adding several crimes that weren't included last November, including additional gun crimes and domestic violence offenses. The reality is that most offenders who were turned over to ICE in New Jersey pursuant to these 287G agreements could have been referred to ICE under the Immigrant Trust Directive. And so ultimately I've concluded that there is no law enforcement need for any agency to enter into them when that agency already has the ability to give federal authorities the information necessary to protect public safety. In accordance with my decision today, I notified the sheriffs in Cape May and Monmouth counties that we would be issuing this new policy. And as a courtesy, we're providing both of those counties with 7 days to wind down their operations with ICE. We'll make ourselves available to assist these two agencies in whatever way they deem necessary as they transition to a model of law enforcement that already exists in this state. Listen, I understand how this issue stirs strong emotions on all sides. But as Attorney General, it is my responsibility to do what is right, not what is popular or easy or politically convenient in this moment. It is my responsibility to do what makes New Jersey safer for all of our residents, wherever they live or wherever they come from. That is what I took an oath to do. Now, New Jersey has one of the finest criminal justice systems in the country and the finest law enforcement officers anywhere. I'm committed to doing everything I can to work with them, to protect the people of this state, and to ensure that our officers have all the tools that they need to carry out that sacred duty. With today's order, we take another important step forward here in New Jersey to build trust, to fight crime, and to make this state safe for all of our residents. I thank you for coming, and with that, I am happy to take any questions.
General,
Yes, Brian.
what reaction have you gotten from ICE, and what reaction have you gotten from the two sheriffs? And if they don't cooperate, what penalty can you take against them?
I have not had a response from ICE. We're making the announcement now. We did notify the sheriffs earlier. I await having a conversation with them to work out the details of this transition. Pursuant to my authority under the Criminal Justice Act, I have supervisory authority over law enforcement in this state, and it's my hope that they will comply. Again, two agencies out of over 500 that are using these agreements. Clearly, all the notifications that they have made to date, the vast majority of them, they could make under our directive, and we had long conversations and exchanges of information with them where they didn't provide us with any justification that supported remaining in these agreements. So we'll have those conversations and work out a resolution over the next 7 days.
What is their alternative?
I have supervisory power over law enforcement in this state to include the power to discipline and to have the ability to take control of certain offices if it comes to that. Next. Yes, ma'am.
So it sounds like you're saying that the agreements are redundant when it comes to public safety.
Well, two things. They're redundant, but in many ways they undermine public safety in this state. The purpose behind our Immigrant Trust Directive, as I stated earlier, was to encourage folks to come forward to report crimes, not to fear law enforcement in this state, but rather to come forward whether they're a victim or a witness to a crime. And these agreements undermine that because they blur that distinction that we've tried hard to make clear to the public. And based on a number of events and experiences, we know that that doubt still exists despite our best efforts, particularly in this moment where there's overzealous enforcement of our country's immigration laws. So our job here is to enforce our state's criminal laws. Their job is to enforce federal immigration laws. They should do their jobs. We'll do our jobs. And where appropriate in connection with serious and violent offenders, we will provide them notice and hold somebody so they can pick them up. That's what we've been doing, and that's what we'll continue to do.
Would you say the redundancy amount to wastefulness, where there's that overlap?
The redundancy, the point of the problem with the redundancy is that it creates confusion. When they enter into and deputize their officers, we're blurring that line. Because, again, as I mentioned, we're working hard to tell folks all over this state that they can come forward to local cops, to state troopers, to county law enforcement, and report crimes regardless of their immigration status and not fear being put into deportation proceedings. When we overlap and we share responsibility and get deputized, we're blurring that distinction, which is so important for public safety.
Question for Director Ambrose, please. Sure.
Let me just go to Brenda first and then.
Sorry, Brenda.
The acting head of ICE complained yesterday in a news conference that they are getting fewer people now from the local community law enforcement agencies, and that he blamed this whole sanctuary type state impact for that phenomenon.
Right.
Essentially, he's saying policies like this are preventing him and his agency from doing their job.
So let me again address that comment and address something that should be clear to everybody in this room and listening. Those individuals who are getting turned over or who we're providing notice of or who they're claiming are being released, we are the ones arresting them in the first instance. We are the ones who are going out there and investigating violations of state law, whatever the crime may be. We are the ones who are then prosecuting them in court. We are the ones who need the victims and witnesses to come forward and provide us the information necessary to prosecute those people. And in the most serious cases, we are the ones who, in our jails, are providing notice to ICE for them to come and pick those individuals up. Now, they identified, I think, 54 people that they arrested in a sweep recently. You know how many people we arrest in this state collectively and prosecute during a week? 2,400 people are arrested in New Jersey on an average week. Those are the people that we need to prosecute. And to prosecute those crimes, we need victims and witnesses to come forward. That's my primary responsibility. But in the most serious cases, we have been and we will provide them notice. And so I think to suggest otherwise is disingenuous, and it's not true to the facts of what's going on here on the ground in New Jersey. Anthony?
Roger, you have a large immigrant community in Newark. Have you had any experience with immigrants either helping or being afraid to cooperate with police?
Well, it's a great question. We have more immigrants that come forward that are witnesses and that are victims. We have very few that are suspects. One thing I will say, we support the directive from the Attorney General. However, we don't have the resources, and we've never got involved in civil enforcement. I am not going to utilize police officers to go out there chasing people that are illegally in the city that are not conducting any type of serious crimes. So we help the sheriff's department. They go if they go assist, years ago, they used to go and put someone out of their house, padlock their house. That became civil, and a lot of civilian people do that now. A lot of constables do that. So this is really nothing new. We've never used our resources to enforce immigration laws here in the city of Newark. I've been here for 33 years. You know, that new buzzword in the last 4 years or 3 years, sanctuary, we've never enforced civil immigration, and we're not going to start today.
One follow-up question for you and Prosecutor Todd, if I may. Have either of you been approached by ICE and asked to participate in the 287G program?
No, that's not.
Prosecutor, no?
Sussex County is not,
And,
Essex is not either.
Nor Mercer. Nor Mercer.
Just underscores that there is not a need for these types of agreements. And again, they only sow confusion. We're in a place where we're trying to get victims and witnesses, as the director said, to come forward to testify in our cases so we can prosecute them and hold individuals accountable. We are the ones doing that. So this notion of sanctuary is a complete red herring, and it's a false narrative being put out there. 2,400 people being arrested in this state each week for committing violations of state law. We are the ones who prosecute those cases. We are the ones who need the witnesses and the victims to come forward so we could punish those individuals and deter others from committing violations of state law. To suggest that we are somehow giving anyone a free pass is nothing but a politically convenient statement to make in the current environment. Hi.
I walked in late, but I want to find out, have you notified Monmouth and Cape May that you're stopping?
We did.
And what was their response?
We haven't got a full response at this point.
And when did you,
We notified them before the press conference, maybe about an hour or two ago.
More questions?
You had indicated that your powers allow you to control the office. Would you remove a prosecutor?
There's no prosecutor here who's not abiding by the directive. And listen, it is my hope that we could work out a resolution that improves public safety in this state. The longer we have this debate, the longer we have this conversation about the need for these 287G agreements, the longer that we irresponsibly use the term sanctuary state or city, particularly in New Jersey, the more confusion we create. And I think all of us in law enforcement, all of you in the media, have a responsibility to correct that, because it is a complete fabrication and a misleading statement to suggest that New Jersey in any way is a sanctuary state. Period. Not the case. 2,400 people arrested a week, 146,000 people we arrest each year for violations of state law. In the most dangerous cases, with the most dangerous individuals, we provide that notice to immigration authorities. And so if they're not picking up people, that's on them. But don't point the finger to any of us, because we work too hard to improve public safety in this state. All right.
General, you have a situation with that, I believe that 5-year-old child that is still missing. I know it's a tough case for the state. I believe the state police are involved in it as well. If these agreements were in force, how much more difficult would that be making your job now?
So, Brian, Cumberland does not have a 287G agreement, but we see from the environment that we are in right now, with all that's going on, with threats of sweeps and threats of raids, and with ICE arresting someone related to that investigation in another state, people are hiding in the shadows. The chief down there is pleading for people to come out and provide information, to not be afraid of the Bridgeton Police Department. So my message to anyone who's got information about Dulce Alves being, her whereabouts or her condition, in this state, under my authority, under this directive, they can feel comfortable and safe reaching out to the Bridgeton Police without fear of immigration consequences, without any fear whatsoever. Provide whatever information you have to the Bridgeton Police so we could find this little girl. But that's a perfect example of why we still have a lot more work to do to clarify all the misconceptions that are out there about our role and about the role of federal authorities. And once we clear that up, I think it's incumbent on all of us to let people know that they can trust law enforcement in this state to help them, regardless of their immigration status.
I think we're good.
Thank you.